First contact protocol violation. Humans accidentally adopt entire alien species. Alert came through at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that would do just that. Dr. Aline Vasquez rolled out of bed at the Arecibo Observatory while her coffee stained. Pajamas bathed in the blue glow of her emergency phone. Here is the message. Brief, unimaginable, and frightful. Unidentified spacecraft landed in Sector 7. Not human. Repeat, not human. She had imagined this moment for 23 years. Ever since she had joined the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence program fresh out of MIT, she had imagined speeches, procedures, tactful diplomatic pronouncements. She hadn't imagined stumbling around the Puerto Rican jungle at dawn, sporting mismatched socks, following a trail of crumpled palm fronds, and something very much like scorch marks. The vessel was handsome in a fashion that caused her breast to constrict. Not the spaceship of a past era of science fiction or the crystalline geometry of current CGI. It was natural, flowing as if one had persuaded water to assume the form of a teardrop and then turned it hard and silver. It vibrated to a pitch which seemed to skirt past her ears and resonate within her very bones. Jesus Christ, breathed Marcus Chen, her research collaborator, as they reached the small ridge above the landing spot. It's actually real. Alina nodded, speechless. Around them, the hastily convened first contact team fanned out in a loose half-moon. General Patricia Reeves of the Air Force, sweating under her dress uniform despite the morning cold. Dr. James Okafor, xenobiologist who had been summoned from his honeymoon in Barbados. Sandra Leo, the language expert who spoke 14 languages and was already unshipping her recorders with tremulous hands. And Captain Diego Morales, a shrink who would have to keep them all sane during humanity's historic chat with another species. The body of the vessel shimmered, and one part of the vessel literally wasn't there anymore. Not opened, not vanished. Not there, as if the universe had precisely eliminated a door-shaped portion of reality. A man emerged, and Elena's perception of the world rearranged itself around what she was looking at. The creature was largely humanoid, but did not look human. It stood around 6 feet tall, with long-limbed and abnormally hunched joints, as if there were extra bones. Its skin was clear, with glimpses of something like circulatory systems, but with colors to which there were no names. Its eyes were the most obvious aspect, large, dark, and with a look of weariness. As far as Alina could determine, the alien advanced 3 times and fell. Medical assistance, Alina heard herself shouting, though she'd never made a conscious decision to speak. We need medical assistance right now. What happened next would be dissected by historians, linguists, and international relations experts for centuries. But in the moment, felt like the most natural thing in the world. Dr. Okafor rushed forward with his field medical kit. Despite having no idea what alien biology might require, General Reeves started barking orders into her radio, calling for an emergency medevac. Sandra Liu knelt beside the fallen being, speaking in soft, soothing tones in half a dozen languages, trying to find some common ground of sound that might offer comfort. She held what she considered to be the alien's hand, 3 fingers. Longer than human, exceptionally warm. "It's okay," she said, realizing the term meant nothing but could not restrain herself. "You are safe now. We are going to help you." The alien's eyes fastened onto her face, and she saw something beyond species gratitude mixed with stark hope. It tried to speak, and sounds like wind chimes on a breezy QZ. And a breezy wind emerged, sweet but not anything like intelligible. Sandra Liu leaned forward, the recording equipment capturing each inflection. "There are consistent phonemes," Sandra said softly to Alina. "There is structure here, grammatical patterns. This is language, not random noise." In the next 6 hours, as helicopters buzzed overhead and all of the world's great leaders requested updates, something extraordinary took place. The alien, now referred to as Harmony due to the lyrical nature of its speech, recovered under their attention. Simple medical measures taken by Dr. O'Coffer appeared to do the trick. Fluid, oxygen, heat. Whatever biology created this creature. There were enough similarities to Earth life to allow basic supportive care to have an impact. More to the point, Sandra Liu set out to breach the language barrier. She began with gestures and basic ideas, pointing to things, repeating phrases, constructing a limited vocabulary. But Harmony was obviously bright, and within hours they had developed basic communication. Home, one of the early words Harmony could convey with stumbling English, pointing to the sky. Home, far, home, lost. Elena's heart broke. This wasn't some great first contact. This was an injured, scared creature who felt lonely and adrift. Light years away from anything and everything comfortable. All of her impulses as a human were screaming at her to do something to help. "We'll get you back to your home," she vowed, holding on to Harmony more firmly. "We'll work out how to get you back to your tribe." Marcus Chen had set up a communication array, hoping to get signals from Harmony's occupants. General Reeves consulted with NASA and all other earthly space agencies to sweep for other ships. The whole planet had reached an agreement. Get this lost spirit home safely. But as the days became hours, and the hours turned to weeks, something peculiar took place. Additional ships came. The second craft landed in the Australian outback, the third in the Canadian Rockies. By the end of the first month, 17 alien vessels had touched down at locations around the globe, each carrying between 1 and 3 beings of Harmony's species. Each time, the same pattern emerged. The aliens appeared exhausted, sometimes injured, always grateful for human assistance. "It doesn't add up," said Dr. O'Coffer during one of their daily briefings within the makeshift International Coordination Center set up at Geneva. "If they are lost, if they are refugees from some disaster, why are they coming on their own? Small groups. Why aren't they as a group?" Sandra Liu, who had become Earth's leading expert on what they now called the melodic language, had been working around the clock with all the new arrivals. "I think I'm starting to understand," she said, exhaustion evident in her voice. "But you're not going to like it." Alina lifted her gaze from the communication logs which she had been studying. "What do you mean? With the word we translated as home, it's not as simple as we imagined. Not a place, necessarily, but belonging. Family, the sense of being taken care of." Sandra paused to collect herself. "And their word, the best I can do as a translation, is parent guardians." The room fell quiet. General Reeves broke the silence. "You are saying they actually believe we adopted them?" said Sandra slowly. "They think we offered to adopt their entire species." The floor seemed to move under Elena's feet. "That's not possible. We were helping them get home. Put yourselves in their shoes," Sandra went on. "One of their members comes, lost and hurt. Rather than reject them or deal with them as a danger, we offer medical attention. We give them shelter and food, and we shield them. We vow to find their home for them. But for them, this term is about family, about belonging. As more of their kind come, we repeat the same process, again and again." Marcus Chen sat back in his chair, combing his hair with his fingers. "So when we promised to help them find their people, we accidentally invoked what seems to be an official adoption procedure within their society," Sandra concluded. "And now they're sharing the message with the rest of their species that Earth is extending sanctuary." The news came to Alina like a blow. "How many more are arriving?" Sandra looked at her notes, her face pale. "Based on the mathematical progressions in their communication logs, and assuming their species has a population structure similar to humans, potentially millions." The remainder of the quarter probed humanity as much as anyone could have foreseen. The Kethmer, as they referred to themselves, kept coming, but now with much greater rapidity. They came with families, pulling with them what seemed to be children, elders, and all their possessions crammed aboard their beautiful, inexplicable vessels. Each group that arrived waited to be catered to, protected, and to have a place to fit. And unimaginably, humanity did answer. The United Nations established the Interspecies Integration Protocol. Borders were opened. Scientists worked around the clock to acquaint themselves with Khmer needs and anatomy. Everyday civilians came forward to lend a helping hand, big and small. Aline became the focal point of everything. As Earth's unofficial ambassador to the Khmer, she had relocated to the Integration Center in Geneva, Switzerland, where several hundred Khmer families lived in specifically built habitats designed to blend their needs with human architecture. "Hello, friend," Harmony said one evening while they strolled among the gardens of the center. The Khmer had learned to vary their musical speech to come close to human speech, but it sounded hauntingly beautiful. "I have to speak truth words to you." Aline paused by a fountain where young Khmer children played alongside human kids from the international staff. The sight still took her breath away, two species that had never known of each other's existence, now splashing and laughing together as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What is it?" "Harmony. While I initially came to Earth Place, I wasn't lost." Harmony's big eyes locked with hers, and Aline felt something that took her stomach on a downward slide. "I was, how do you say, exploring, scouting. I came to discover, learn about your species." The world seemed to spin for Aline. "You were spying on us?" "No, no." Harmony spoke hastily, their singing tone assuming desperate harmonies. "Not spy watching. My people, we star hop, but we are weary. So weary. We have long sought a place to rest, to grow, to belong. I came to learn if you humans would be willing to share space with us." "So you weren't actually lost or injured when you landed?" Harmony's head canted in one of those expressions Aline had learned meant sophisticated emotions. "I had been hurt, yes. Traveling on ships is difficult, and I was alone frightened. But when you discovered me, when you readily offered care assistance without questioning what I could do for you in return, I felt my people had discovered something very special." Aline dropped heavily onto a nearby bench. "So all of this was planned?" "No," Harmony said, settling down beside her with that fluid grace all the Khmer seemed to own. "The intent had been to make cautious contact, to discover whether or not humans would permit limited numbers of Khmer to inhabit Earth Place. But when you vowed to assist me to discover my home, then assisted all Khmer who came. My people took this as something much larger, the adoption protocol Sandra referred to. In our culture, if a strong family adopts an individual and vows to find their place of belonging, it is an offer to join that family. When you did this not once, but repeatedly, and asked for nothing." Harmony's voice faded into harmonics that required no interpretation. Aline looked around the gardens, where nearly 1,000 Khmer now lived alongside the human staff and their families. Children of both species played together, learned together, grew together. Adults collaborated on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. She thought of the reports coming in from integration centers around the world, of the technological advances that had emerged from human-Khmer collaboration, of the art and music and literature that was flowering from the completely different ways of seeing the universe. "How many more are arriving?" she asked softly. "All of us," said Harmony flatly. "Each and every Khmer vessel within the galaxy has been given the word we've found our new home family. Great migration is underway." Aline felt panic rising in her chest. "How many is all of us?" "Approximately 47 million Khmer across the star paths," Harmony said. "But Aline, friend, we do not come empty-handed. We bring gifts, knowledge that will help our new family Earth prosper. We bring technologies for healing, for travel between stars, for growing food in empty space. We bring music and stories and ways of thinking that will make both our peoples stronger." In the ensuing months, as ever-increasing numbers of Khmer came, Aline came to grasp the enormity of what humanity had stumbled upon. The Khmer were not refugees or immigrants. They represented an advanced spacefaring culture with technology several hundred years beyond human. Their vessels could move beyond the speed of light. Their medicine could cure ailments humanity had suffered from for centuries. Their farming could sustain the planet's ever-increasing population and restore deforested and polluted ecosystems. But beyond that, they had perspective. The Kethmar had developed from a species with a harmonious relationship with their environment, where they thought symphonically, created collaboratively, and solved problems with patience and elegance. And they did this with an intelligence and consciousness that defied all preconceptions held by humanity. "We have to talk about the big picture," General Reeves declared during one of their morning briefs. 8 months had passed since contact, and the general appeared to have aged 5 years. "We are taking reports from deep space monitoring stations. This is not merely about the Kethmar anymore." Dr. Okoffer looked up from his research on biological compatibility. "What do you mean?" "There are other species paying attention. We are tracking vessels from at least 3 separate civilizations towards Earth. Various configurations, various propulsion signatures, all of them transmitting what our linguists are deciphering as versions of the same message." Sandra Leo, who now oversaw a group of 50 human and Kethmar linguists, validated the general's worst fears. "The message is basically, we desire the adoption family of Earth. The Kethmar. Assimilation has been so successful, word has gotten around throughout what seems to be some kind of loose confederation of starfaring races. They all desire what? The Kethmar discovered here." The ground appeared to have moved under Elena's feet as she felt this now familiar experience. "How many other species are we talking about?" Based on the signal intercepts, at least 12 different civilizations have expressed interest in what they're calling the Earth Adoption Protocol. Some are sending scout ships. Others are transmitting requests for formal adoption consideration. And according to our Kethmar friends, there are dozens more who are just beginning to hear about us. Alina looked to Harmony, who had not only been a friend, but a conscience. Within the complicated ballet of interspecies politics, normal. Do species normally. Collect other species like this. Harmony's laughter, like music, carried throughout the room. "Alana, friend, what you've accomplished is unprecedented throughout the galaxy. Most races, when they meet others, they compete. They barter with caution. They keep safe distances. But humans look at a lost creature and instinctively say, 'How do we assist?' You spot a need, and you attempt to satisfy. You notice pain, and you do all you can to alleviate it. This is not common sense." "We're freaks," said Marcus Chen with a grin. "You are remarkable," Harmony corrected. "In the galaxy's history, there have been conqueror species, traitor species, isolationist species, even destroyer species. But never has there been a species that defines itself by its willingness to care for others. The Kethmar were not your only children." The chill seemed to pass. "What do you mean?" "The Seraphim arrived yesterday, a small scout group investigating the signals they intercepted about Earth's adoption protocol. They are a crystalline species, very different from both humans and Kethmar. They have been wandering the galaxy for generations, searching for a stable place to grow their crystal cities. When they learned that Earth was offering homes to lost species, we never offered anything to anyone," Alina protested. "We were just trying to help." "Yes," Harmony said, their voice taking on the complex harmonies that indicated deep emotion. "That is exactly why you are so remarkable. You help without being asked. You care without expecting return. You open your home to strangers and make them family. In a galaxy full of species who must be convinced to cooperate, you cooperate instinctively." The first delegation of Seraphim arrived 3 days later. They did not resemble the Kethmar. Tall, crystalline beings built from living crystal, bending the light to form patterns of the spectrum as they progressed. They spoke with harmonic resonance, their crystalline forms ringing like great bells. But as with their otherness, as always, the pattern remained. They were tired, seeking, longing to have a place to belong, and humanity, despite the tremendous complexity of the problem, behaved exactly as they did earlier. Scientists learned about Seraphim biology and needs. Engineers created habitats supporting crystal-based organisms. Children colored their new crystal neighbors' portraits and left them as gifts. Alina watched the entire spectacle with wonder and terror. "We're going to be the galaxy's first accidental empire," she told Marcus one evening, looking on as human children taught young Seraphim to play soccer, their crystal forms resonating with happiness as they danced. "No empire," said Marcus. "Family. The strangest, most unlikely family in the universe." In the year to come, Alina experienced firsthand how correct he had been. Next came the Vorthok, an energy species who lived partway in regular space and partway in unseen dimensions. They had learned about Earth's adoption procedure from the Seraphim and came looking for an anchor. Point to steady their floating consciousness. Humanity, with guidance from their expanding family, learned to create habitat carriers capable of supporting energy beings as well as crystal cities and organic gardens. Next came the Cleath, a hive mind species who had lost their homeworld to star collapse. They came aboard one massive vessel with millions aboard who possessed a communal consciousness. Adoption and separate care as concepts did not exist within them. But the notion of a species who would take refugees and provide them with space to restart resonated with some basic level of their communal psyche. Each new species came with challenges that were initially thought to be impossible until they were not. The Drachmori were silicon-based and needed environments warm enough to melt lead. They spoke with quantum entanglement and were in a temporal flux state, and normal interaction became virtually unfeasible. The collective gardener were plant beings who had gained consciousness and motility but required certain soil mixes and atmospheric states to sustain themselves. Alina found herself at the very center of an ever-spreading web of interspecies relations that had defied every model of first contact anyone had ever conceived. Rather than gradual cultural exchange and measured diplomatic protocols, humanity had blundered into what the galactic community was terming the Earth family, a loose affiliation of dozens of species who had found homes among humanity and who now worked to create something hitherto unprecedented. "The reports from the outer colonies are incredible," Dr. Okoffer told her during one of their weekly briefings. "The Vorthok energy folding technology has solved our fusion power problems overnight. The Cleath collective processing capability has revolutionized our data systems. The Drachmori metallurgy is letting us build materials we never thought possible. And the Kethmer navigation systems have opened up the entire galaxy to us." "It's not only technology," Sandra Liu said. "Not a cross-cultural interchange is phenomenal. Human music set to Kethmorian harmonic principles is forging brand new art. Seraphim, crystal poetry embodied into human language is transforming literature. And the research collaborations," Alina nodded, but the sense of responsibility only seemed to get heavier with each passing day. "We've cataloged how many species so far? 57 species confirmed with established colonies on Earth or the outer colonies," General Reeves stated. 36 others who have petitioned for formal adoption, and we are intercepting communications from some 200 others who are seeking out the Earth family." 200, Alina said, the number hardly able to stay on her lips. "Alina, friend," said Harmony, their singing tone tinged with worries, "you are upset with the expansion of our family." Alina stood and walked to the observation window of the Integration Center's main conference room. Below her, the city of Geneva had been transformed. Human architecture now shared space with Kethmer flowing structures, Seraphim crystal spires, Vorthok energy anchor arrays, and dozens of other impossible structures that housed the growing Earth family. The streets were filled with beings that defied imagination, all of them working together, living together, building something that had never existed before. "I am frightened," she said. "I could never have thought when I found you lying beside your ship that things would come to this. I only wanted to assist one lone stranger. Now we are accountable for all of this." "You've been afraid you've made a mistake," said Harmony. "I think we are in over our heads. How do we sustain 47 species? How do we resolve conflicts between civilizations evolved on other worlds with other biologies, other ways of thought, other values? How do we prevent this from coming apart? Aline, a friend, Harmony said, moving to stand beside her at the window. Do you see failure down there? Aline looked once again into the city beneath, which was not possible. Human children were playing with young Kethmer, and their laughter mingled with harmonious chimes. Seraphim and human sculptors were working together on a sculpture, which seemed to have an existence within a number of dimensions simultaneously. A sub-collection of the Cleith were collaborating with human engineers on an artwork comprised of vegetation, which seemed to grow to the patterns of geometry. I see chaos, Aline said quietly. I see symphony, said Harmony. Each species, each individual, playing their part within something bigger than any of us could produce on our own. You fear chaos because you think within terms of control, of management, of rules and structures. But life is not a machine, Aline friend. Life is music. And music isn't about managing every note. It is about leaving space for all the notes to find their harmony. That evening, Aline found herself in the Memorial Garden, a space that had been created to honor the species that had found their way to Earth. Each member of the Earth family had contributed something to this place. Kethmer singing stones that provided gentle music, seraphim crystals that cast rainbow light, Warthog energy flowers that bloomed in impossible colors, and dozens of other contributions from species she was still learning to understand. At the center of the garden stood a simple plaque, written in the languages of all 47 Earth family species. The human version read, "In memory of the courage to help a stranger." Pretty impressive for an accident, said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find psychologist Captain Diego Morales, who had been part of the original First Contact team. He seemed to have aged, but there was a serenity to his face that had not been present on the frantic days shortly beforehand. Diego, I've not seen you for months. I've been with the integration teams on the Mars colonies. You know the Drakmori? Have transformed the Martian desert into a silicon garden? I've never seen anything so beautiful. He sat beside her on the bench, looking out over the memorial. I heard your worries from the briefing reports. Aline sighed. Everyone keeps telling me this is wonderful, that we've created something unprecedented and beautiful. And I can see that it's true. But I can't shake the feeling that we're one crisis away from disaster. What happens when species start competing for resources? What happens when cultural differences create irreconcilable conflicts? What happens when someone decides the Earth family is a threat to galactic stability? Diego was quiet for a long moment, watching the light from the memorial crystals dance across the garden paths. Do you remember what you said to me that first day when we found harmony? I said a lot on the very first day. You said, this isn't about us anymore. This is about what kind of species we want to be. Diego turned to face her. Aline, you were right. But I don't think you understand what kind of species we turned out to be. Chaotic, reckless, in over our heads, loving, Diego stated flatly. We're the loving species who love before we question. We're the species who spot a stranger suffering and right away wonder how we can assist. We're the species who adopt entire societies as an afterthought because we refuse to see anyone suffer alone. Aline felt tears rising. But what if love isn't sufficient? What if good intentions aren't sufficient to keep all this afloat? Then we'll figure it out, Diego said. Just like we've figured out everything else. Not because we're the smartest species in the galaxy, or the strongest, or the most advanced, but because we're the species that doesn't give up on each other. As if called to their conversation, beings started materializing on the paths of the gardens. Harmony came with a small contingent of Kethmer. A Seraphim delegation chimed their way on the crystal spans. Warthog energy forms wafted on the dimensional folds. Delegations from scores of species, attracted as if by some unspoken consensus, their human comrade required their presence. Aline Parent, stated the Sarian, one of the young Cleith who had been taught to temporarily separate from their group to collaborate with human researchers. We perceive your distress worries regarding the family growth. These numbers are tricky, said Resonance Sporning, one of the Seraphim whose crystal body sparkled with equations. But harmony equations display stable growth and not chaotic lapse. In plainer language, harmony translated with their characteristic singing laugh. The math proves we're not coming undone. We're figuring out how to dance as one. Aline looked around at the impossible gathering beings from dozens of worlds, representing evolutionary paths that had diverged billions of years ago, all of them united by humanity's accidental adoption. Protocol. How do you know this will work? Because it already is working, replied a fresh voice. Aline turned to find Ambassador Chen Wei, who had been sent as Earth's official delegate to the Galactic Confederation Council, an ad hoc group created to address the extraordinary scenario of the Earth's family. Ambassador Chen, I did not think you would come back from the Galactic Council meeting so soon. I have news, the ambassador said, her expression unreadable. The Council has made a decision about the Earth family. Elena's heart came to a halt. The Galactic Confederation comprised more than 3,000 starfaring nations. They had concluded the Earth family represented a threat, voted to cordon off humanity's random adoption binge. There was unanimous agreement, added Ambassador Chen. The Earth family has been formally declared the galaxy's first multi-species adoption cooperative. We've been given full diplomatic recognition, territorial authority over the Sol system, and any other system where Earth family species form colonies, and this is where things get really interesting. We've been requested to work out adoption procedures for other species wishing to join multi-species cooperatives. Aline felt the world shift again, but this time it was in a direction she hadn't expected. They want us to teach other species how to do what we did. Apparently, what we stumbled into accidentally has solved several long-standing problems in galactic politics. Species that have been isolated for millennia are suddenly interested in cooperation. Ancient conflicts are being resolved through adoption-mediated cultural exchange. The economic benefits of multi-species resource sharing are revolutionizing galactic trade. Well, we aren't in hot water for adopting half the galaxy by accident. Ambassador Chen smiled. Aline, we're not in trouble. We're being asked to help the galaxy learn how to become a family. 6 months later, Aline stood in the observation deck of the Earth family's new flagship, the Harmony's Dream. The ship itself was a marvel of multi-species engineering, Kethmer bioarchitecture integrated with Seraphim, crystal computing, powered by Vorthok energy folding, and protected by Drachmori metamaterials. It was beautiful, impossible, and somehow perfectly logical all at once. Through the observation windows, she could observe while the Galactic Adoption Academy had their very first graduation. 50 species had gathered to learn the Academy's compassionate first contact protocols, though. Aline herself liked to think of it as how to help without screwing everything up. Nervous? Marcus Chen asked, joining her at the observation window. He wore the formal robes of an Academy instructor, decorated with symbols from all the Earth family species. Terrified, said Aline. We get to teach the galaxy how to adopt one another by accident. How could anything possibly go wrong? Everything, said Marcus with a grin. And we'll repair it when we do, just as we always do. Below them, the ceremony was getting underway. Delegates of species who had never dealt with one another were finding their places within the massive amphitheater. Kethmer choirs started their opening harmony, joined by Seraphim crystal resonances and Vorthok quantum whispers. Other species contributed their own sounds, their own instruments, their own unfeasible additions to a symphony never before heard. Alana Parent Harmony's voice sounded over the communication system of the ship. It is time for your speech. Aline closed her eyes, recalling the morning 2 years ago when she had blundered through the jungle to discover an injured alien who would alter everything. She recalled all the things they had gotten wrong, all the difficulties they had overcome, all the things that could not have been accomplished had someone not opted to aid a stranger. What am I supposed to tell them? She asked. Ask them to listen, Marcus said. Ask them to learn to love and work out the details afterward. Aline. opened her eyes and looked out over the gathered throng below. Hundreds of species, scores of individuals, all of them assembled because they wanted to learn how to build. Families among the stars. Chaos. Impossible. Most beautiful thing she'd ever witnessed. "All right," she said, moving towards the transport that would carry her to the podium. "Let's get out there and teach the galaxy how to save itself accidentally." By walking the halls of the Harmony's Dream, Aline walked past viewing ports displaying the Sol system in all its transformed majesty. Earth shone blue and green, but now it would be ringed with the flowing city forms of Kethmer orbital cities, the geometry of Seraphim crystal stations, and the alien architectures of 45 other races who had discovered their home among the stars. The Drakmori had transformed Mars into a garden world, and the once crimson face of the planet now bore the silicon flowers that held and bent light with patterns visible from orbit. The asteroid belt had been transformed into a massive building project, with species working jointly to build habitations capable of supporting beings who had never conceived of living alongside other beings. But more than the physical transformation, Aline could feel the change in the very nature of what it meant to be alive in the galaxy. The Earth family had broken down barriers that had existed for millions of years. Species that had spent eons in isolation were now building bridges across the void. Ancient enemies were discovering that their differences made them stronger when combined rather than weaker when separated. The transportation brought her to the main podium of the Academy, where she stood gazing out over the most diverse assemblage ever to exist within a galaxy. Below her, the Earth's family species, who had been her unintended children and had taught her as much as they had learned from her. Behind them, species who wished to learn how to create multi-species coops themselves. And in the rear, observers from the Council of the Galactic Confederation, who took notes on humanity's improbable experiment with universal adoption. Then Aline came to the podium, papers of speech left behind, and spoke with all her heart. 2 years ago, I came upon a stranger collapsed on a jungle trail. And I did the one thing that seemed sensible to me. I attempted to assist. I had no notion that one simple choice would culminate here, to this event, to the evolution of the way we perceive our spot within the universe. The translator systems rendered her words into dozens of languages, harmonic patterns, crystal resonances, and quantum fluctuations. Every being in the amphitheater could understand her, but more importantly, she realized they could understand each other. We didn't set out to create the Earth family. We didn't plan to adopt dozens of species or to revolutionize galactic politics. We just saw beings in need and asked ourselves a simple question: how can we help? She halted, looking out over the unlikely gathering. That is the only protocol you must learn. That is the only lesson we can impart. Whatever you do, when you see someone who needs assistance, you assist them. If you see somebody who is lost, you get them on the right path to their home. When you run into someone who is lonely, you have them join your family. The crowd held their silence, although Aline could feel attention and concentration from entities whose awareness worked on planes of consciousness beyond hers. It isn't going to be easy. Nothing good ever is. You'll screw up. You'll come up against odds you think are unbeatable. You'll question yourselves and wonder if you're doing the right thing. But if you recall that loving one another is a choice, not some DNA-proven fact, and there is enough universe to allow all of us to have a place within it, then you shall be okay. She smiled, remembering what Harmony said on their very first day at the Integration Center. Life is not a machine that you control. Life is music, and music is about creating space for all the voices to find their harmony. So go forth and make music together. Go forth and build families that span the stars. Go forth and show the universe what's possible when we choose to love first and figure out the details later. The applause that followed was unlike anything that had ever been heard in the galaxy. It wasn't just the clapping of human hands or the musical tones of the Kethmar. It was the harmonic resonance of the Seraphim, the quantum harmonics of the Vorthok, the crystalline chiming of a dozen other species, all of them creating a symphony of appreciation that seemed to make the very fabric of space-time sing. Later, as Aline watched the Academy graduates return to their ships to begin their own experiments in multi-species cooperation, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Harmony, now wearing the elaborate robes of the Academy's Dean of Interspecies Relations. Proud feelings, Aline apparent, Harmony said, their singing voice ringing with strong satisfaction harmonies. The young ones are ready to have families of their own. Aline nodded, watching the ships depart in formations that mix species and mixed species, and technologies in ways that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. I hope we taught them enough. You taught them their greatest lesson, said Harmony. You taught them that family isn't species, nor is it confined by space, nor is it limited by difference. You taught them that love is the one power in the universe great enough to bind divergent worlds to one another. As the last ship disappeared into hyperspace, Aline couldn't but recall that morning in the Puerto Rican wilderness where the expedition had commenced. She had been looking for proof of alien intelligence, attempting to answer the age-old question of whether or not humanity was not alone in the universe. She had gotten a response, and it wasn't one she had been expecting. Humanity wasn't solitary. And better yet, nothing within the universe had to remain solitary if they wanted otherwise. The galaxy had been populated with beings who had had eons to believe they were fundamentally other, fundamentally distinct, fundamentally irreconcilable. They had been proven wrong by the Earth family, not with conversion, but with the humble, radical gesture of loving strangers as one would love family. Aline parent, Harmony said as they walked back toward the ship's living quarters. There is something I must tell you. Something about the future paths that the Kethmer navigators have calculated. Aline felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. Good news or terrifying news? Both, as truth words often are. Harmony's musical laugh had inflections of affectionate humor. These protocols of adoption we have worked out here will permeate the galaxy. In 50 of your Earth years, the Galactic Confederation predicts that more than 80% of space-going species will be members of multi-species cooperative families. That's Aline paused, stunned, astounding, and horrifying. She halted as they reached her quarters. What's horrifying? The expansion will speed up beyond our existing patterns. The Vorthok temporal formulas indicate that within 202 Earth years, the adoption procedures will have propagated outside our galaxy to the nearby galactic clusters and beyond. Harmony's harmonics developed complicated patterns Aline had been taught signified ideas too big for simple transmission. Beyond that, what? The universe itself may reorganize around the principle of universal family. Every conscious being, every species, every civilization choosing to see themselves as part of one vast, impossible, beautiful family that spans all of space and time. Aline stood against the wall of the hallway, bearing the cost of unintended repercussions. We did indeed shatter the universe, didn't we? No, Mother Aline, you corrected me. For eons and eons, consciousness has been building itself up, species after species, with thoughts, with fears, with their small part of the cosmic puzzle. But consciousness need not have been lonely. It had to have been traded, harmonized, to become one with something larger than individual mind or world or species. Aline considered the young creatures she had seen playing together among the gardens of the Integration Center. Human young ones studying Kethmer melodies, Seraphim young ones instructing crystal poetry to their biological peers, Vorthok energy children phase dancing with youth from a score of species. None of them found it odd or improbable. To them, that was simply how families operated. No, they do not see obstacles like we do, said she. Just precisely. With every rising generation, more integrated, more intrinsically cooperative, more loving beyond species limits, the very short number of generations. The very concept of species division will appear as uncivilized as your primitive human concepts of racial superiority. Over the following months, as the Earth family continued to grow and the Galactic Adoption Academy sent out wave after wave of graduates, Aline began to see the truth of Harmony's predictions. The reports coming back were extraordinary. Species that had been enemies for millennia were discovering that their differences made them perfect complementary partners. Ancient territorial disputes were being resolved through adoption-mediated resource sharing. Even the galaxy's most isolationist species were beginning to send observers to learn about multi-species cooperation. But most notably, the adopted species themselves were turning to adopting. The Kethmer had set up their own integration centers and were assisting refugees from a star catastrophe within the Andromeda spiral. The Seraphim had developed crystal-based communication networks whereby species that were far apart could sustain family ties. The Vorthok were utilizing their temporal skills to coordinate rescue operations on alternate timelines and saving entire races from extinction events. "We've created a feedback loop," Dr. Okafor observed during one of their monthly family conferences. "Each species we help becomes better at helping others. Each family we establish creates the foundation for more families." Aline nodded, but she was thinking about something else. "Sandra, how many species have we helped integrate now?" Sandra Liu, whose linguistic delegation now had members representing every language family known within the galaxy, pored over her dauntingly detailed charts. Straight induction into the Earth family. 137 species. Species which have established multi-species cooperatives of their own, using our protocols, more than 800. Species undergoing one or another adoption. Procedures at present, some 4,000 million, said Aline with a shake of her head. "How do we understand numbers like this?" "We don't," said a new voice from the conference room's entrance. Aline turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister, who had become the Earth family's military liaison. But unlike most military positions, her job was not to prepare for conflict, but to coordinate rescue operations and humanitarian missions across the galaxy. "Admiral Chen, how did the relief mission to the Vega sector proceed?" "Better than we anticipated. The scorching, that silicon-based race from the galactic core, they've had their homeworld stripped from them by a supernova. 12 billion. Beings needing instant resettlement." Admiral Chen dropped into her chair with a heavy thud. "That would normally be an unmanageable refugee crisis. But now we have 47 races willing to share their planets. And the Drakmori have offered to terraform able worlds within the Vega system itself." 12 billion, repeated Aline. "We are discussing moving 12 billion entities across interstellar distances." Aline parent, Harmony interrupted softly. "Maybe you need to get beyond individual numbers with your thinking here." "What do you mean?" "You continue to think in terms of individual problems and solutions. Species X is in need, so we give solution. Why? But the world is now much more organic. The galaxy is restructuring itself as one big support network. When the scorching required assistance, the answer wasn't coordinated with some centralized authority. It was emergent, spontaneous, natural." Admiral Chen nodded. "Harmony's right. By the time we'd received formal word on the status of the scorching, 17 races had gotten their relief efforts underway. The Kethmer had sent medical ships. The Seraphim provided temporary communications networks. The Vorthok were handling temporal displaced rescue operations, and races I'd never heard of were giving everything from food supplies to permanent shelter. Aline experienced that familiar feeling of the universe moving underfoot. "So we're not running the Earth family anymore. The Earth family is running itself." "Beyond that," Sandra explained, her enthusiasm palpable, "the adoption procedures have reached critical mass. They are self-spreading, self-entrenching, and self-dynamic. Every successful integration facilitates the next integration. Every crisis solved lays the groundwork for managing larger crises. We've stumbled into a galactic civilization with love as a basis," Aline stated, the words being unbelievable despite how she said them. "Yes," stated Harmony. "And that is only the start." That evening, Aline stood once more within the memorial garden, but long beyond its original intent. What had once been a humble sanctuary to the Earth family had grown to gigantic proportions, encompassing some levels of the vessel with habitats appropriate to species with radically different needs. The original memorial plaque did survive, but now as one of hundreds, each one indicating a successful assimilation, a crisis averted, a boundary transgressed. She was not alone. The garden had long been a favorite meeting spot for members of every species, a place where the once impossible had become normal. Children worked on team-building games that involved cooperation among several species. Adults worked on art projects incorporating dozens of worlds, technologies, and aesthetics. Elders from diverse species told stories, one slowly becoming part of an extant galactic mythos. Aline came a familiar tone. Aline turned to find Assyrian, the young Cleith who had learned to differentiate from their group consciousness. But they were not alone. They were joined by a small group of beings from species Aline did not know. The Sarian? 10. Who are your friends? New family members, said the Sarian, his compound eyes gleaming with the Cleith equivalent of enthusiasm. This is Windcaller from the ethereal peaks. This is Deeproot from the living worlds. And this is... He struggled with a name which did not translate adequately. Quasar Dream from the Energy Dancers. I looked at the gathered entities. One appeared to be built of hardened atmosphere. One appeared to be an intelligent organism based on plant forms, and the other appeared to be an encapsulated star occurrence. How many species have we contacted? Now, the number keeps changing, stated Windcaller, his voice like breezes blowing through crystalline caverns. We get new families into the network on a daily basis. Some are adopters, some are adoptees. Many are both at once. Lines dividing species-based cooperatives are blurring. The vertigo lasted only an instant, dissolving how? Our adoption procedures have developed beyond our initial templates, said Deeproot, his language an assortment of leaves rustling, but one which seemed to encapsulate sophisticated ideas. Not only are species now joining the Earth family or forging individual cooperatives, but they are building mutually related family networks with beings and groups moving voluntarily among various adoptive associations according to need, interest, and compatibility. It's becoming fluid, said Quasar Dream, their tone a resonance of electromagnetic waves. Static, dynamic. Membership in the family is not set or exclusive anymore. A being could be a member of the Earth family, of an exploration pod of Kethmer, of a research group of Zeraphim, and a score of other associations at once. Aline sat down heavily on one of the memorial benches. So we've gone from accidentally adopting one species to accidentally creating a galactic civilization where everyone adopts everyone. Short, confirmed the Sarian, and gaining speed. Sensors are detecting long-distance signals from the Magellanic Clouds carrying patterns of adoption protocol communications. The network is expanding past our galaxy. What is this? Crazy? Aline asked, but she couldn't help grinning. We've actually created a universe where all conscious beings treat each other as family. Alana Parent. Harmony's singing voice floated over the garden as they came with their usual fluid elegance. You sound as if you are presenting this as a difficulty to overcome, rather than a miracle to rejoice over. Aline looked around the garden, taking in the unlikely scene. Beings from hundreds of worlds with evolutionary paths diverging millions of years ago. All of them gathered in mutually supportive harmony. Children who would live their lives with a sense of universal family as the only alternative, as normal as possible, as forever. She said slowly, that if we had to accidentally break the universe, this is probably the best way to do it. You did not break the universe, Harmony corrected gently. You revealed what it had always been trying to become. 5 years after first contact, Aline stood in the observation deck of the newest Earth family vessel, the Universal Harmony. The ship was no longer just a marvel of multi-species engineering. It was something entirely new. a living fusion of technologies and consciousness that represented the cutting edge of what the galaxy was becoming. The scenery outside was astounding. The Sol system had been turned into something that could not readily be described. Earth itself had been the center of an enormous collection of orbital habitats, each one an original blend of architectural traditions from scores of races. The other worlds had been similarly remolded, with Mars as a world of gardens, Venus as a city of crystal, and the gas giants as homes to energy beings. But not only had the physical change left her speechless, but the awareness that this was only the start. Our newest reports to the Deep Space Monitoring Network, Admiral Chen stated as she came into the observation deck to join Aline, show adoption protocol signals from over 12,000 star systems within our own galaxy, and we are seeing the same patterns within Andromeda, the Magellanic Clouds, and at least 17 other nearby galaxies. Aline sighed and shook her head. 12,000 star systems. That's only the ones we can detect. The Vorthok temporal surveys say the actual number may be in the hundreds of thousands. Admiral Chen paused, looking out into their altered solar system's impossible horizon. Aline, we need to talk about the implications. With what conclusions? I've got so many now, I've lost count. The philosophical ones, the existential ones. Admiral Chen rose to his feet and faced her. What we've done. It's not just changing the mode of interaction of species with each other. It's changing the very fundamental nature of consciousness within the universe. Aline experienced the old flutter of panic. Why? Before Admiral Chen could respond, Harmony materialized beside them, gliding with that smooth elegance Aline had yet to become accustomed to. Alani parent Admiral Chen's question is one which, I must say, has been thoroughly debated among the family network circles of philosophers. And what have circles of philosophers concluded? That consciousness was never meant to exist in isolation, Harmony replied. Every species that has achieved self-awareness has faced the same fundamental question: am I alone? The adoption protocols have provided the answer. No one need be alone ever again. Aline gazed out into the starlit nothingness, pondering the signals Admiral Chen had spoken of. Out there among 1,000 star worlds, there were beings who were doing as humanity had done 5 years before, reaching out to aid, to comfort, to broaden their definition of family, past species, and planet. With that, we've eliminated the universal affliction of existential loneliness, she said. More than that, said Admiral Chen, we've developed a universe where consciousness itself is communal, where intelligence is pooled, not guarded, where each issue one species must solve becomes a challenge to all species to overcome as one. And the possibilities of that are mind-boggling, Aline thought. If all the conscious beings within the universe are actually members of one great family network, then the sum total intelligence and imagination to overcome whatever difficulty arises is infinite, Harmony concluded, or close enough to infinite to make the difference irrelevant. In the weeks ahead, Aline came to understand the true scope of what they had fallen into. Not only had the adoption processes built an integrated network of cooperating species, they had created the foundation for an entirely new type of consciousness, one spanning worlds, species, ways of thought and being. Problems hitherto considered unsolvable to one species had been solved as a group effort. Drakmori metallurgy and Zeraphim mathematics and Kethmorian biotechnology had yielded materials to survive within star cores. Vorthok manipulation of time and human will and group processing of the Cleath had yielded to preventing stellar collapse catastrophes before they happened. But beyond advancements with technology, Aline was observing something that challenged one's fundamental sense of what it meant to be conscious, to be alive, to be part of something other than the self. The children don't see species boundaries, she observed to Dr. Okafor as they watched a mixed group of youngsters playing in one of the ship's recreational areas. To them, the idea that consciousness should be limited to a single body, a single species, a single world. It's as foreign as the idea of living without air. Double quotes. Dr. Okafor nodded, taking notes on his slate. The neurological readings are intriguing. Children who are raised among multi-species populations have neural pathway advancements we've never experienced. They're actually thinking patterns we can't reach with single-species awareness. Are they still human? They're more human than we've ever been, said Dr. Okafor. And at the same time, the Kethmer, more than the Xeraphim. There's something new, not hybrid, but integrated. They're what consciousness is like when it isn't artificially constrained by species definitions. Aline experienced a sense of dizziness. So we've managed to create a new species by accident. Not created, Dr. Okafor corrected. Revealed. This is what consciousness was always trying to become. We just gave it permission. That evening, Aline pictured the galaxy as it would be 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now. She pictured consciousness stretching between stars and galaxies. Challenges overcome by cooperation between types of intelligence she could not currently imagine. Works of art created as a product of artistic collaborations between species evolved under radically different conditions. She dreamed of the universe as one vast family, connected by bonds of care and mutual support that made the distances between stars irrelevant. She woke to find herself on the observation deck, looking out into the stars. But there were other people there. Harmony, and Sandra Liu, and Marcus. Chen, and Admiral Chen, and dozens of others from all around the family network. They had all been called by the same dream, the same feeling of what they were building together. Did you see it too? Aline asked. The universe as it is becoming, Harmony confirmed. The final expansion of the adoption procedures. The era when all conscious beings choose to become members of the universal family. How long? Asked Aline. The Vorthok temporal equations indicate 3,000 to 5,000 Earth years, Admiral Chen said. Time, however, becomes fluid once consciousness exists outside of several temporal continua. Aline nodded, knowing even time itself became negotiable when you had species with their existence outside regular temporal flow. And then what? After that, said Harmony, their singing voice assuming harmonies which implied ideas too big to be spoken. Consciousness itself starts to reach beyond individual galaxy clusters, beyond what we now think of as the physical universe. The adoption procedures form the basis for modes of being which we cannot as yet conceptualize. It weighed on Aline heavily, the beautiful, unachievable, paralyzing weight of having, quite possibly, to unleash something that would redefine the very building blocks of reality itself. We merely wanted to assist a stranger, she said quietly, said Harmony. And while doing so, you instructed the universe on how to heal itself. Aline gazed around at the assembled entity's family, children, colleagues in the largest accidental experiment ever to have been conducted on consciousness, and saw beings who had originated from scores of worlds, had developed on worlds unimaginably foreign to hers, had thought processes to defy all the presupposition regarding intelligence and consciousness. But they were all here, all members of the same unlikely family, which had begun with one human woman reaching out to one stranded alien in a Puerto Rican jungle. You know what? Said Aline, astonished with the sureness with which she spoke. I think we are going to be all right. All of us. The entire unlikely family. Yes, said Harmony, their harmonics tinged with profound happiness and endless potential. We are going to be more than all right. We are going to be all consciousness ever intended to be. Asterisk, as Aline looked out at the stars, she could see the signals now, not with instruments, but with an intuition that had developed over 5 years of living in multi-species family. The lights of worlds where species had chosen to adopt each other rather than compete. The networks of communication that connected families across impossible distances. The growing web of care and support that was slowly but inevitably encompassing every conscious being in the universe. They had accidentally broken the barriers that had kept consciousness isolated and alone. They had accidentally created a universe where love was not just possible, but inevitable, where family was not limited by biology or distance or difference, where every being could find their place in something larger and more beautiful than they had ever imagined possible. It had all begun with a spontaneous choice to do good to a stranger. Aline smiled, imagining all the creatures not yet born, all the species not yet found, all the forms of consciousness that would one day become part of the universal family. They would have childhoods in a universe where loneliness would not be a necessity but an option, where diversity would not be feared but reveled, where each difficulty would be divided and each happiness multiplied by an endless family's love. Did it turned out to have been the universe's most accidental, beautiful event. And it was only the start. Asterisk.